What's up, guys? It's Messed Up Swede. I'm, I'm gonna keep checking out this UK drill plug video, the Peckham Boys, London's Deadliest Gang. And yeah, let's keep watching, man.
Launched. Whilst police were investigating the murder,
Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe.
dozens of stop snitching leaflets were handed out to residents of the
I'm handing out leaflets about stop snitching is crazy, man.
Pelican estate. However, despite this, an anti-member known as Tiny Nutty and a GMG member known as Jungle were arrested in connection to the murder. Both were charged and eventually found guilty, both being sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 26 and 30 years. Rest in peace, Vesta. Going into 2011,
R.I.P.
a group of young gang members from Peckham began to experiment with music, this being PK, which is rumored to be an acronym for Peckham Kids. One of the more prominent members of PK was that of Killer Reeks, who released a freestyle in 2010, this garnering around 14,000 views since its release. Despite this, however, going into 2011, the war involving the gangs from Peckham, as well as their rivals from Brixton, would only worsen, with shootings, stabbings, and murders becoming a common occurrence within the streets of Peckham. Now, in 2011, a gang from the Summerley in Brixton, known as MZ, would be making noise in the streets. At the time, MZ was linked up with Gas, also from Brixton. However, later down the line, the two gangs would split and start rivaling one another. I'm saying this because, in 2011, a prominent member of this MZ gang, known as Josie, was sadly killed in a car
He looks young, man.
accident. This death affected Brixton heavily. It's even known that Josie was close with Sneakbo, who has gotten millions of views on his songs. Anyways, a few months after Josie's death, in November 2011, his funeral was set to take place in East Dulwich. Whilst the funeral was in session, however, an anti-member was in the area and noticed the large group of people mourning the loss of Josie. The anti-member then shot a man present at the funeral 6 times at point-blank range, killing him on the scene. It's rumored another man was also shot but luckily survived.
At a funeral as well, man. R.I.P.
Investigation was swiftly launched, and 3 men were arrested. However, all 3 went on to later be released as there was insufficient evidence to charge them, with this murder remaining unsolved. Rest in peace. Also, around this time at the end of November 2011, an old road rap video, presumably recorded in the years prior, was uploaded onto YouTube. This video featured Giggs, as well as dozens of other Peckham boys rapping on their block. Something that made this crazy, though, was the fact that during the rap video, a gunshot can be heard in the background, with Giggs seemingly not flinching at all. Also, dozens of guns were shown within the video, which is something that can nowadays carry a very long sentence if found in possession
That would never happen today, man.
in the United Kingdom.
In Sweden, though, there's pretty much guns in every video. Well, I guess they just put a disclaimer that it's prop guns or something, and they get away with it.
Your worker saying shit, getting flipped for the cheapest. Now the streets ain't the same.
Yeah, he didn't even react, man. He's just rapping.
We hurt the market.
Going into 2012, however, a large amount of the Peckham boys were arrested in different cases, resulting in the youngers taking over and releasing music. Now, in February 2012, Giggs was actually stopped by police whilst in a car. The car was then searched, and an illegal firearm was recovered. Giggs was then arrested, and was on remand for around 6 months before the case was dropped, as the driver had even admitted to owning the gun. Giggs was acquitted and released toward the end of 2012. Also around the start of 2012, some PYG gang members fell out with one another. This then resulted in a small group of members splintering off and creating a new gang known as Breadset. These Breadset gang members then rivaling their old friends from the Peckham sets. Now, following this, 2 teenagers from Peckham began to drop freestyles, these being Nutcase, who later became Quengface, as well as Preacher, who
And that was early, man.
later started rapping under the name PS.
FPS as well. They started early, man.
In April 2012, Preacher or PS dropped a My Time session on
Looks like he's 10 or something right there, man.
YouTube, with this garnering just under 10,000 views. A few months later, in June 2012, Nutcase or Quengface also dropped a freestyle, in which you can actually hear him shouting out MOB or Mandem on Brandon. Following this release, in August 2012, Preacher and Young Rids dropped a MMTV freestyle, currently sitting on around 4.5.
That's nuts, honestly. Thinking about how they've been rapping for 12 years. And I don't know exactly how old they are, but I think Quangface might be like 26, something like that. And PS, I'm guessing it's around that age as well. Crazy.
5,000 views. In October 2012, armed police carried out multiple raids on prominent members of the Peckham breadset gang. During these raids, an M16 rifle was seized as well as
M16 in the UK, that's gotta be rare, man.
40,000 pounds of drugs. Two gang members were then arrested and charged, and in 2013 were later sentenced in relation to the raids. Now, remember how I said that Preacher and Nutcase or Narsty were rapping around this time? Well, they were associated with a younger Peckham set known as 365, or Dank Boys, which you may have heard of, as this 365 gang later became known as Zone 2. Anyways, this 365 gang started to take music seriously around 2013. In January 2013, Young Mares and Dens, who later became known as D Squeezo, released a track titled Pumped Up. Nutcase or Quengface then dropped a track titled Pour It Up in May 2013. It's rumored, in fact, that during this music video, multiple other 365 members can be seen. A month later in June 2013, Preacher or PS and Rids dropped a track titled Dream Chasers. Something that made this track eerie when looking back on it was the fact that the top comment on the video was by a commenter named Raheem Barton, and if you are familiar with UK drill, you will know that this was GB from Moscow 17, who at the time was friends with Preacher and Rids, with the comment saying, Preacher and Rids going in as usual. Sadly, however, due to the gang politics in the area, GB was later killed by Peckham gang members in 2018, this being the height of the Zone 2 and Moscow 17 rivalry. However, I'll talk about this later. Now, at the start of 2014, the violence between Peckham gangs as well as their rivals continued, and in February 2014, the rivalry between Peckham gangs and ABM from Stockwell began to get
Stockwell as well, okay.
heated.
No, Steve Figures is from Stockwell, right?
On the 7th of February 2014, 22-year-old Sykes, who also was known as Tiny Gigs, would be on Clapham Road near Stockwell Tube Station. At around 5:30 p.m., Sykes was stabbed by alleged ABM members from Stockwell, sadly dying only moments later, which is crazy, as previously Stockwell and the Peckham boys were affiliated with one another. Shortly after this, a member of the Peckham breadset retaliated and got into a fight with an ABM member in prison, with this even being recorded and uploaded onto YouTube. Rest in peace, Sykes. Following
R.I.P., man.
this at the end of 2014, an anti-member from Peckham, known as M1, would be arrested after he was in a police chase in Peckham. During his arrest, he was discovered in possession of a loaded shotgun. M1 was charged with possession of a firearm with intent to cause fear of violence, possessing a prohibited weapon, and finally dangerous driving. In March 2015, M1 was found guilty and was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with the judge stating he had links to a gang in Southwark, as well as deeming him a dangerous person, and sentencing him to a further 3 years if he is still deemed dangerous at the end of his sentence. Now, as 2015
They can do that? Like, put in it, if he's still deemed dangerous at the end, put another 3 years on it. Um, that sounds crazy.
rolled around, the 365 crew, whose membership was mainly the youngest generation of Peckham, were making noise in the streets. It's believed, however, that at some point in 2015, 365 began to go by the name Zone 2. The main members of this gang included Quengface, previously Nutcase, PS, previously Preacher, and D Squeezo. This Zone 2 gang was actually affiliated with Moscow 17 from the nearby Brandon estate at the time, with it even being known that prominent Zone 2 members can be seen in Moscow 17 member Incognito's Rico music video, released in November 2015. Following the release of this track, however, both Zone 2 and Moscow 17 began to rival one another, this feud quickly becoming the deadliest beef in the borough. It's alleged that around the beginning of 2016, a prominent member of Zone 2, known as PS, would rob the cousin of Loose Screw, who was a Moscow 17 member. After Loose Screw found out that his cousin had been robbed by PS, the pair had a fight, with it being believed that flick knives were drawn. However, no one was seriously injured. A Moscow 17 member known as Tizzy T attempted to resolve the tension between both sides, however ended up being stabbed by a Zone 2 gang member. Tizzy T was actually pronounced dead on the scene for a short period of time, but by a miracle was brought back to life by paramedics. It's rumored that following this, Zone 2 and Moscow 17, who were once allied, now had a rivalry with one another due to the stabbing of Tizzy T. Now, it's also
It's crazy how, like, doesn't take much for, like, two gangs that are linked to start beefing instead. Like, just a little thing happening to someone that knows someone, and now it's beef. It's crazy, man.
Important to note that another gang was and has since become prominent within Peckham, this being HSQ or HS, which is an acronym for Hit Squad and is believed to be a sub-gang containing Zone 2's most dangerous and active members. Their most prominent member is that of PS. Zone 2 are also affiliated with YPB, or Younger Peckham Boys, who also have prominent rappers like Gully. Now, going into 2016, the UK drill scene was seriously exploding, with 6-7 from Brixton beginning to really shine in the scene. The collective dropped a track titled Take It There in August 2015.
Yeah, this is when I started like tuning into the UK basically. I remember seeing like a documentary or something about 6-7 early as well. I think they were in Denmark, that documentary, if I'm not mistaken.
As well as Live Corn by LD at the end of 2014, both of these tracks gaining millions of views and streams.
Might have might have been a documentary about LD actually. I don't think it was about the whole of 6-7.
By LD at the end of 2014, both of these tracks gaining millions of views and streams. Gigs from SN1 saw this group of rappers who were making waves in the UK drill scene and hopped on a feature with them. This track was later released in February 2016 and was titled Let's Lurk. This track was an instant hit and has since garnered around 22 million views on YouTube and 19 million streams on Spotify. Anyways, in March 2016, Shoot Instant member Snap Capone, who had been making noise in the UK drill scene, previously dropping tracks like his Daily Duppy. Anyways, he was arrested in connection to
Daily Duppy was about back then. Started early, man.
a massive county lines operation, with it being believed that they were running drugs from Southampton to London. Snap Capone was charged in relation to this, and was eventually found guilty and sentenced to 6 years for the drug trafficking. Now, during 2016, the rivalry between Zone 2 and Moscow 17 would be raging. This was first seen in June 2016, when 15-year-old Rizzy Ramps from Moscow 17 was noticed by 2 members of the Zone 2 gang. Rizzy Ramps was then chased through a fun fair in Burgess Park, which is actually the park that separates Zone 2 territory.
Yeah, see, that's what's crazy to me as well. All that separates these two gangs is a park. Like, you can never relax. You can't go to the shop. You can't. I can't imagine the stress of being in that life, man.
Territory and Moscow 17 territory. Rizzy Ramps was stabbed multiple times in the stomach and back. The injuries were so severe, in fact, that it's even known that his organs were exposed. An air ambulance arrived on the scene shortly after the attack and transported 15-year-old Rizzy Ramps to hospital, where he luckily survived. 3 weeks after this, at the start of July 2016, prominent Moscow 17 member Knockout Ned would be in a Camberwell McDonald's at around midnight. A Zone 2 member then
We've heard all these references in multiple Zone 2 songs as well, man.
noticed him. The Zone 2 gang member then ran inside the McDonald's and stabbed Knockout Ned in the neck. Police and emergency services were called to the scene seconds after the attack, and Ned was rushed to a hospital where he luckily survived. This incident was later rapped about in a Zone 2 track titled No Censor, in which Unruly Bad rapped, "Ned just wanted a cheeseburger. Max, what you do that for? Knockout's juice gets spilled on the floor. Huh, you just started a war." This bar potentially meant that the stabbing of Ned had now marked a war between Zone 2 and Moscow 17, which was only going to get worse as the months went on. A few weeks following the stabbing of Knockout Ned, on the 21st of July 2016, Giggs released the track Whippin' Excursion. This track was also a hit for Giggs.
That's a cold one.
And has garnered around 15 million YouTube views and 21 million Spotify streams. Also around this time, another rapper was making a huge noise in the UK drill scene, this being Shoki, who was affiliated with the 814 gang from Lewisham. This 814 gang was actually a splintered off set from the larger Ghetto Boys. Anyways, on the 4th of August 2016, Shoki released a Daily Duppy freestyle, which was taken extremely well and has since garnered around 2.5 million views. Sadly, however, Shoki wasn't able to see this success, as a day later, on the 5th of August 2016, Shoki was killed by a gang member from a Peckham-based set known as SNR. This SNR gang was once affiliated with the Peckham Boys as well as YPB, however it's since believed that they have come to rival one another. On the 5th of August 2016,
RIP, man.
16-year-old Shoki, or Leoandro Osameki, as well as a few hundred other teens, attended a house party hosted by a 16-year-old girl in Peckham. Around 25 seconds after arriving at the house party, a 15-year-old gang member from the SNR gang based in Peckham got into an argument with Shoki. This argument sadly ended in 16-year-old Shoki being stabbed twice in the chest by the SNR member. The attacker then fled and jumped a fence, running home. Police and emergency services were then called to the scene. Sadly, however, 30 minutes after arriving at the party and being attacked, Shoki was pronounced dead on the scene. A murder investigation was then launched. With the news that Shoki had died beginning to fly around social media, a 15-year-old boy was arrested 2 days after in connection to his murder and was charged with Shoki's murder. In the end, however, after a full trial, the 15-year-old claimed self-defense and was acquitted of the murder in 2017. Rest in peace, Shoki. Since his killer's release from prison, he has featured in multiple interviews that show his side of the story. The SNR member has also got music videos on YouTube that have since garnered hundreds of thousands of views. It's believed, however, that if Shoki was still alive today, he would have been one of, if not the biggest UK drill rapper. Dave even paid
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
tribute to Shoki on Instagram and had even shouted him out on previous tracks, example being Thiago Silva, in which he rapped S with the S from the S. Ask Shoki Dustman down with a mask like Toby. Rest in peace, Shoki. Later in September 2016, Dave released his highly anticipated EP titled 6 Paths. This EP featured 6 tracks that all have garnered millions of views and streams. On song 4, titled Breathe, Dave actually made a reference to the Peckham gangs and their feud with Brixton, in which he rapped, "Man, jump off road, they want to judge, man. Same man say, free my G's, can't ever tell my young boys trap I ain't cool with the gas like P.
Ain't cool with a gas like PYG. That's a cold bar, man.
PYG being a Peckham gang known as Pecknarm Young Gunners. Nearing the end of 2016, Zone 2 really started to shine within the UK drill scene. In August 2016, Narsty or Quengface, P or PS, and Scully released a track titled 2 Flows. This track was seriously cold and rude. During the first verse, PS questioned why he was beefing Moscow 17, rapping, but
10-0. Someone tell me why I'm still beefing these neeks.
it's 10-0. Someone still tell me why I'm beefing these neeks. Zone 2 then ended the year with a end-of-year freestyle. This freestyle featured Narsty or Quengface, Denz, who was now going by D Squeezo, as well as his younger Young D Squeezo, with this freestyle garnering just under 100,000 views. Zone 2 weren't the only ones making noise, however, and also around this time, 2 members of Moscow 17 who were directly opposing them, being GB and Loose, released a track titled Moscow March. This was a
That was a banger back then, man.
seriously cold track and featured multiple disrespectful lyrics aimed toward the Zone 2 gang. Sadly, however, only days following the release of these tracks, another person was killed as a result of an internal conflict with the Peckham gangs. On New Year's Eve 2016, 24-year-old Robo or Tiny Blacks was chased through Peckham by alleged Peckham gang members. Sadly, he was stabbed multiple times. Emergency services were called to the scene. However, sadly, only minutes after he was stabbed, 24-year-old Tiny Blacks was pronounced dead.
R.I.P., man.
Post-mortem examination determined his cause of death was multiple knife wounds, yet another murder investigation was launched. It's rumored that the death of Tiny Blacks was a result of an internal dispute within Peckham gangs. Tiny Blacks was actually loved in Peckham and had supposedly featured in multiple music videos. Rest in peace, Robo, or Tiny Blacks. In March 2017, gigs featured twice on Drake's 2017 album titled More Life. One of the songs was titled No Long Talk and currently sits on 136 million views, whilst the second, titled KMT, has
KMT's a banger, man.
around 185 million Spotify streams, which is crazy as this just shows how big gigs has become. Despite this, however, the war between Peckham's Zone 2 and Moscow 17 began to get deadly in 2017 and 18. On the 5th of June 2017, 17-year-old Abdurrahman Mohammed, or Abs, who was believed to not be in fact involved with any of the local gangs, but was rumored to be related to members of Zone 2. Anyways, 2 members of the Moscow 17 gang would be riding around Peckham, looking for rivals. After a few minutes, the pair noticed 17-year-old Abs, who wasn't believed to be a member of the Zone 2 gang. The Moscow 17 members then chased Abs after noticing him. Abs made it a few meters, before he was sadly stabbed in the heart by the Moscow 17 members, with the attackers then fleeing. Emergency services arrived on the scene and tried to save his life. However, despite the best attempts of medical professionals, sadly 17-year-old Abs was pronounced dead, with a murder investigation being launched.
R.I.P. once again.
Both Incognito as well as Jet Black from the Moscow 17 gang were arrested and charged for the murder. The pair went on trial. However, following a long trial, both were acquitted and released from prison. Rest in peace, Ebs. Later in July 2017, Zone 2 released one of their first albums titled No Hook. This album featured 7 songs that have all gained hundreds of thousands of views. Standout tracks on this album include No Hook, featuring Quengface, PS, and Trizak. This track even getting a music video. Zone 2 Step, featuring PS, Quengface,
That one was cold as well.
Zach and Scully, and finally Most Hated, featuring Quengface and PS. This album really put the Zone 2 collective on the map and gained them a lot of attention within the streets, leading to them becoming one of the biggest UK drill groups out at the time. Zone 2 weren't the only ones releasing albums around this time, and in October 2017, Giggs released his album titled Womp 2 Dem. This was a 13-song album and had features from Popcorn, DEE, Dave, and Young Thug, which is crazy.
That's some big features, man.
Also around this time, it appeared that Zone 2 and 410 had seemingly stopped rivaling one another and made a song, because remember, OC from Brixton later became known as 410, whilst the Peckham Boys gangs became known as Zone 2. This meant that after decades of rivaling one another, the younger generations of Brixton as well as Peckham simply stopped the decade-long feud and linked up in the studio, releasing a voice of the
Yeah, I remember that one. I do remember this one.
Streets Freestyle, which has since garnered around 1.3 million views. Both groups dropped another track in 2021 titled No Fibs, this sitting on just under 1 million views. Recently, CS, who was a Peckham OG, actually responded to this link-up on Snapchat, writing Zone 2 x 410, lol, the game has changed. Now, going into 2018, rappers like Quengface would be dropping serious UK drill bangers. Quengface started the year by releasing a track titled Tour de Op Block. This song has since become a UK drill classic, garnering 1.4 million views. Quengface followed this up with a track titled 3 Stripes, which has also gained a good amount of attention, currently sitting on around 2.4 million views. Within this song, he mentioned that he didn't mind sliding on a Spartan, or a Harlem Spartan, which was a gang from Kennington. Despite this, however, the war between Zone 2 and Moscow 17 was still raging, with it becoming a common occurrence to see Snapchats portraying both sides riding out onto each other.
This is the time I was talking about earlier, man. It was crazy seeing them like driving around each other's blocks like every day on Snapchat and stuff like that. So reckless, man.
One of these, in fact, portrayed Zone 2 members traveling around the Brandon estate, home to the Moscow 17 gang, and pressuring anyone they drove past. Sadly, however, days later, a Moscow 17 member was shot dead by alleged Zone 2 gang members, this being GB, who was even once friends with Zone 2 members, before both sides began to rival one another. On the 5th of May 2018, 4 gang members allegedly associated with Zone 2 would be driving around the Brandon estate. The 4 Zone 2 members noticed a group of Moscow 17 members. It's rumored that within the group was GB, as well as other prominent Moscow members. Whilst driving past, the Zone 2 members retrieved guns and started firing from their moving car. GB was struck twice, and sadly died seconds later in the arms of another Moscow member known as Incognito. It's rumored, in fact, that the Zone 2 members actually wanted to kill Incognito. An investigation was swiftly launched. However, despite an entire investigation, little to no arrests have been made in connection to the murder of GB. His
R.I.P., man.
friends and family were quick to mourn him, even marching to his track, Moscow March. Rest in peace, GB. A few days following the death of GB, his close friend Incognito released a tribute track titled Blessed, with this currently sitting on around 3 million views. Within this song, Incognito paid his tribute to GB, as well as dissing rival Zone 2 members. Sadly, however, just a few months later, Incognito as well would fall victim to the streets. Around a month following this, in June 2018, 2 Zone 2 members, known as D Squeezo and Lil D Squeezo, approached a man they thought to be trapping. This man was known as SJ. An altercation between SJ and the 2 Zone 2 members then ensued. Sadly, SJ was stabbed multiple times by the pair, who then fled after the attack. Sadly, SJ was pronounced dead after emergency services rushed to his aid, with yet another murder investigation being launched. Not long after the murder
R.I.P., man.
of SJ, D Squeezo was arrested and charged, as well as his younger Lil D Squeezo, who was also charged. The pair were found guilty, and D Squeezo was sentenced to 27 years, whilst Lil D Squeezo was given 15 years. Rest in peace, SJ.
I think he said 27, but it says 21.
to 27 years, whilst Lil D Squeezo was given 15 years. Rest in peace, SJ. Around a month following this, in August 2018, Incognito from Moscow 17, who was one of the group's biggest rappers, would be chilling with a younger Moscow 17 member on the Brandon estate. Whilst on the estate, the pair noticed a man wearing a Rolex, both Incognito as well as the younger member, then walked towards the man, attempting to rob his Rolex. What they weren't expecting, however, was the fact that the man had retrieved a lock knife. Incognito was then chased for a few seconds by the man, as it's rumored he was unarmed. Incognito was stabbed twice in the neck, with the younger Moscow member fighting back and stabbing the man. Despite this, however, Incognito was pronounced dead moments later, whilst the man sought medical attention and recovered in hospital. Shortly after the attack, Kenneth Umezi, who is believed to not have been involved with the local gangs, was arrested and charged in connection to the murder, however was later acquitted under the basis of self-defense.
Yeah, I thought so. R.I.P. man.
Rest in peace, Incognito. Now, during 2018, Peckham legend Killa Kai, who was credited to have organized the link-up between both Ghetto and Peckham in the summer of 2008. Anyways, Killa Kai returned to the UK drill scene in 2018, dropping the track titled History of Peckham, whereas I'm sure you can tell, he rapped about the history of the Peckham boys, as well as the other gangs. Within this track, he stated that he takes it old school, and it was SI or Shoot Instant to PYG, or Pecknarm Young Gunners, two heavily influential sets involved with the history of Peckham's gangs. Now, at the end of 2018, Quengface released his highly anticipated Lightwork freestyle. Within
That one was a banger back then as well, man.
this track, he stated that all of his ops were tired and needed to retire, as they were screaming Pecknarm K or Pecknarm Killer, but no Zone 2 members had been killed. This freestyle was quickly removed from YouTube, but has since been saved and re-uploaded. Despite this, however, it currently sits on 3 million Spotify streams, which is crazy. 2018 was also the year that other rappers from Zone 2 began to make noise. Example being Karma, Mad Max, and Snoop, who all did numbers around this time. Now, going into 2019, another Peckham legend known as Raver was released following his July 2007 arrest and sentencing. Upon his release, he began to release music, with these songs raking in hundreds of thousands of views. Now, it's rumored that in 2019, PS from Zone 2 or Hit Squad often posted up in Edmonton dissing the Edmonton-based gang 3x3. This was mainly due to the fact that PS was banned from Peckham and had to live with his mum in Edmonton for a few months. Anyways, during 2019, E1 from 3x3 would
I mean, it doesn't seem very smart to be dissing the gang if you're living in the area. But that's just me, man.
end up catching PS lacking, with the entire incident being recorded by E1 and ZT. The pair then made PS run, with E1 and ZT chasing him on camera.
I don't care about all of these, your beef in it. I don't care about you lot's beef. I got beef down south, bro. I got bare beef down south. I don't care about you lot's beef.
Say that in PS.
You get me?
Mum's life. This Edmonton, E1, ZT. You're gonna hear about us. You're gonna hear about us. Even Trizak. I see Trizak making Trizak's making cheeky snaps as well. What's Trizak on?
It's not cheeky. You lot are moving.
Fam,
You lot are moving mad.
what do you mean moving mad, bro?
Yeah, we've seen this clip plenty of times, man.
You're coming to our hood. Do we see us coming to Peckham and do these cheeky snaps?
You don't come.
Bro, we don't come to Peckham and do these snaps, bro. We don't come to Peckham. PS! 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 Zone 2!
Days following this incident, members of 3x3 would go to PS's mum's house and would kick down her door while she was inside with PS.
Look at this silly boy, PS.
Hey, Future, come outside. Hey, you
Hey, silly.
Hey, come outside.
Ask him if his mum's front door's alright, mate.
It's rumored that following this, alleged Zone 2 members then retaliated and shot up Edmonton. This is something that was later wrapped in Zone 2's disrespectful track No Censor, released in December 2019, in which Quengface rapped, PS just shot up the 9, now man's doing up cheeky snaps. E1 later responded to this bar in his popular track Enfield or Tottenham, where he rapped, apparently you shot up the 9, PS tell me who you slapped. You weren't doing up cheeky snaps. When you bucked me in Zeds, you was doing up dash. Panic heart attack, when you saw the GMs outside of your mums. The No Censor track was actually released not long after these incidents, and featured the Zone 2 rappers Unruly Bad, Karma, Quengface, Trizak, B Gotti, and LR. This song made a huge wave in the scene, due to how rude it was. As I'm sure you can tell by the name of the song, this track really had no censors, which was something UK drill listeners had gotten used to listening to around this time. As UK drill was beginning to become heavily censored around this time, Moscow 17 members, as well as Harlem members linked up following this, and released a response track titled He's Dead. This also garnering millions
This time was crazy as well. All these no censored type of songs, man.
Millions of views. Going into 2020, another rapper from Peckham began to make noise in the streets, this being Gully, who was a breath of fresh air in the UK drill scene, having some of the coldest flows and ad-libs I think I've
The Gully's cold, man.
ever heard. In August 2020, he dropped the track Video Vixen, garnering 309,000 views. A month later, he dropped Yingdat, which actually got a remix in November 2020. This remix featuring Trizak, Backroad G, Tollers, and PS Hit Squad. This sitting on around 650,000 views, which was very impressive. Despite these views, however, in 2022, Gully found himself wrapped up in a murder case, which has since been taken to trial, and has resulted in Gully being given a life sentence, meaning that he somewhat threw his promising music career away. On the 16th of July, 2022, 19-year-old LJ, who was allegedly associated with the DQN crew, was sitting in his car. Whilst in his car, Gully approached him and asked what ends he was from. By the time LJ had replied, he was stabbed twice in the neck, with the attacker fleeing seconds later. Despite the injuries, LJ transported himself to hospital, where he was sadly pronounced dead that same day, with another murder
R.I.P., man.
investigation being launched. Just hours following this attack, Gully was on an Instagram live talking to his fans, when all of a sudden police raided his home and placed him under arrest for the murder.
I'm naked. Can I get dressed?
Someone get a towel or something.
I'm naked. There's clothes in the living room.
Keep coming down. Keep coming down.
There's clothes in the living room. Let me get dressed, man.
Keep coming down. Keep coming down.
Let me get dressed. Look,
Keep
I'm
coming
dressed.
down.
I'm dressed. Let me get
Stop
dressed.
there. Stop there.
Oh my God,
Stop.
I'm mad.
Take 2 steps forward. Take 2 steps forward.
Boss, I'm not
Listen,
moving. I'm not
listen,
moving.
Godfrey, you're under arrest for murder, okay?
I'm not
Listen
moving.
exactly what I'm saying. Put
I'm
the
not
phone
moving.
on that radiator. Put the phone on the radiator. Do not make any sudden moves.
Gully was found guilty of the murder and was sentenced to life with a minimum of 24 years, which
Hey, that's unfortunate, man.
is crazy, as Gully could have made it out with music, but chose to focus on the road life. Rest in peace, LJ. In August 2022, SD from Harlem paid respect to Huss from OC, which was the Brixton gang that later became known as 410. Huss was actually the one charged and found guilty for the incident that resulted in an innocent man being gunned down when Brixton members noticed Snap Capone and Butch in August 2008. Also in 2022, Quengface and CB released 2 tracks, one titled Machines and the other Plankton, both garnering hundreds of thousands of views. Quengface wasn't done there, however, and around the end of 2022, he as well as Gigs were spotted on social media blocking off roads in Peckham for a music video. This music video was titled Water and was later released in March 2023, currently sitting on just under 3 million views. In behind-the-scene images, around 150
That's a cold one, man.
Peckham gang members can be seen blocking off roads for the music video. Now this brings me to the end of today's video. If you have learned anything from this video, make sure that it's to stay out of the streets and or as far away from them as possible, as this road life you see these rappers living.
Yeah, man. Stay out of the streets. Doesn't end well. This was a long video, man. But yeah, it's crazy to see how streets evolve, or like how gangs split up and start beefing this and this and start linking up with people they used to beef, and the other way around as well. Like, yeah, hard to keep up, man. But yeah, hopefully more guys can focus on music or other legit ways out and stop with the street stuff, man. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And I'm out. Peace.